Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, which I will say is available in audio format on both Audible and Apple Books. So check out the new edition. It just came out over the last few months. It includes up through the 23-24 season. You got 65 play-by-play broadcasters represented in there, calling for all 32 teams, 12 Hall of Famers, not to mention voices like Marv and Kenny Albert, Gary Thorne, and for the Red Wings, Ken Cow, Ken Daniels, and Paul Woods. So go out and grab it, folks. When I say go out, I don't even mean go out. You can do it right from the comfort of your own home and on your computer. You don't have to go out to a bookshelf to grab it. It's an audio format. Just download it. 12 hours of insanity narrated to you by Chuck Buller. It's a great flow, and I promise you wouldn't be disappointed, especially Red Wings fans. Anybody who have seen the cover of the original edition of the book in print shows Vernon and Waugh going right at it in Bloody Wednesday. And so there is plenty of Red Wings represented in the book. Speaking of the Red Wings, they are going up against the Toronto Maple Leafs for the fourth and final time in the regular season tonight. The Red Wings are 3-0 so far against the Maple Leafs, looking for the season sweep. Now, this is an original six matchup, so of course it's good theater. The Red Wings had an original six matchup last week and got shut out by the Bruins, and then the week before that they had a pretty good original six matchup against the Canadiens and shut them out 4-0. So the Maple Leafs coming into the game are 6-2-2 in their last 10. At home, the Maple Leafs are 16-6-5. Now on the road, the Red Wings are 12-8-3. Not a bad road record. And in their last 10, they're 7-2-1. So I think I mentioned in yesterday's program that the Maple Leafs are basically, this is their homecoming game in the sense that they're just coming back from their road trip. They've been doing a little bit hotter. They've been making their way a little bit more up the Atlantic Division ladder. They were in eighth at one point. Not just even a couple of weeks ago. And now I think they're basically sitting at fifth or sixth. They're over the Panthers and they're over the Senators. I know that much. But like I said, fans are probably going to be pretty hungry for them to get a win. Red Wings got their work cut out for them and taking on the Leafs tonight. Looking at there's 5 guys on the IR for the Maple Leafs. So that's can be thought of as pretty advantageous for the Red Wings because the Red Wings have actually been playing pretty healthy. I don't think even anybody's on the injured list or a day-to-day or a game-time decision right now. They're pretty clean on as far as the health goes. One of those 5 on the IR for the Maple Leafs is Nylander, one of their solid players. And obviously, Marner is not with Toronto as he used to be. So you got Tavares, you got Austin Matthews, missing Nylander and missing Marner. That was a 4-headed monster there for the Maple Leafs. It's too bad they really couldn't get that Stanley Cup final run going, having those 4 on their offense. But anyway, a couple other things. Looking at the head-to-head, goals forced, advantage goes to Toronto. Goals allowed, advantage goes to Detroit. Penalty kill, advantage goes to Toronto. And power play, advantage goes to Detroit. So they're pretty evenly matched. Versus division, the Red Wings are 9-4-2, whereas the Toronto is 6-6-2 versus the division. So Red Wings have been doing pretty good against the Atlantic, and let's see if they continue that trend. We'll see. We'll talk a little bit. We'll have a bit of a recap of tonight's game tomorrow and tomorrow's show, along with Throwback Thursday and a couple other segments. So happy hump day, folks. And it is Wednesday, which means it is time for the Over the Hump question of the week. I've already brought this up before, and obviously it hasn't been an over the hump, or they haven't gotten over the hump if I have to bring this up again. So the early deficits are one thing. We got an early deficit against Ottawa. We still ended up winning the game. We got an early deficit against Boston and never crawled out of it. So actually it wasn't too early, but we got into a deficit. I believe against Boston, I don't think anybody scored until like halfway through the second period or something like that. But still, getting into those deficits and getting away out of them. A lot of times they're depending on the home crowd to get them through it. It seems like some of these more recent overtime wins have been where they've either climbed back or have just completely, self-destructed, like against Carolina in the third period, and were able to at least escape with the 2 points. But whether or not they're over the hump is a question. But the real big hump, I think, that is mostly on everybody's mind is the fact that the first period goals, have been kind of at a premium for the Wings this season. That stat a lot of times comes up, especially in the national games when they're trying to throw something at us so that they can help us to get some kind of semblance of what's going on in the game. But I think one of the stats that's always brought up is the fact that they're outscored in the first period, or their first period offense is just really not really happening so much. So, but they do have first period goals in 5 of their last 7, and even after the other team scored first. So yes, they have had their woes in basically getting out to early deficits, but they've still been able to score first period goals, which is always a good thing because they really click and they really are on their clicking on more cylinders, I guess, in the second and third period. They're a better second and third period team than they've been over recent years. Obviously to become a 60-minute team, you got to have a better first period, but they've shown a little bit of promise in that aspect of the game, and obviously it's shown. Like I said, they're 7-2-1 their last 10. Gibby, he's going to be in the net tonight. He's got 6 straight wins, and he's been 15-2 in his last 17 starts. So these are things that really bode well, and if they can get off to a good start, especially as hot as Gibby's been playing, then hopefully they can really give Toronto a run for their money and come away with 2 points before they go over to Minnesota and take on a really difficult Wild team, a team that's been turning a lot of people's heads, especially the last 2 seasons the Wild have. So we'll see what happens tonight, and we'll see how gassed they get and how exhausting of a game this is, having to travel and come back to the stateside and go to the upper Midwest and play the Minnesota Wild on Thursday night. Okay, so I have gotten a little bit of criticism in the sense that it seems like I talk about the Golden Knights a lot. They're like, why are you not talking about the Red Wings as much? I get it. But then again, we haven't really had any games the last 2 days. So I wanted to take an opportunity, especially with 2 games in a row happening tomorrow, to do a little bit of league laundry. That's what you do sometimes when you start to run out of things. I'm not running out of content or anything like that, but, we've been talking a lot about different things Red Wings wise, and we've talked about a lot of things going on in the league, talked about the Olympics, things like that. But one of the things that to me is just really shocking, it's never shocking anymore with Alexander Ovechkin, the fact that the guy is still scoring 20 goals a season, even at the age of 40. Doesn't surprise me. But another product from around the time that Ovechkin came into the league is, yes, that number 1 pick from, I believe it was the 2005 draft. That's right, Sidney Crosby. He is 38 years old, so he's not as old as Ovechkin. He basically came into the league. He's won 3 Stanley Cups. We could just unroll. It would be like one of those decrees that the guy who announces for the king and just unrolls the thing. That would be all the accolades and accomplishments that Sidney Crosby's had in his career. And he played in his 1400th game up here in the Pacific Northwest a couple of nights ago. So 1,400 games, I think that puts him at 45th on the list all time. But he also, in the same game, he had his 512th multi-point game, which put him past Mr. Hockey himself, Gordie Howe, as far as most games that do that. He's not all-time number 1 or anything like that, but basically, anytime you pass Gordie Howe on an offensive statistic, you're doing something right. What really baffles me this year is that he has got 26 goals. He leads the team. He leads the team in both goals and points. The next closest goal scorer is Rust with 17. So he's got nearly 10 goals more than this guy who's running up second. So it's It's not even like a close second right now. And points, he's 55. He has 55 points, which is a team lead, and 37. Also, Rust is the second most. So he basically has pretty much 33% more points than the next closest player on the team. Those are the kinds of things that just really make me scratch my head. When the Red Wings played them in 2 straight games, like, he was getting it done, and when his plus or minus was fantastic, and he was really just putting it to us. It seems anytime he was on the line, we were not getting shots off. I think that Ken Daniels mentioned that in the broadcast. It's like anytime Crosby's line was out there, we were not putting him on net. So he's a presence not only offensively but defensively also. He's a good mental kind of cheerleader going forward. So yeah, 38 years old, and he still has a plus or minus of +2 on this season. You don't see that often, honestly, folks. At that age, the plus or minus really starts to go down a little bit more, mostly because you're not skating with as much intensity. You're just not hitting the strides as much. But obviously, Crosby is showing that he can hit those strides, and he's going to be representing Team Canada once again, and looking to, add on even more to that scroll that just keeps on rolling on out the door with accolades and trophies and championships and medals and you name it. So congratulations for playing in your 1400th game, Sid. Slap me silly, Sydney. The late Mike Lane would say that often. Moving on and back to the Red Wings so that I don't catch the ire of the comments and everything like that, saying, what happened to the Red Wings? Well, here's what happened to the Red Wings. We're going to talk about Sherratt. Benny's got the spotlight today, and I think sometimes that I get a little carried away talking more about offense and seeing how many points they've scored and all that. But Sherratt has obviously been a presence on the defensive line for the Red Wings. He Mo's the one everybody's talking about, at least in Detroit, as far as defensemen go. He's even in the talks with, up there with Makar and Werenski and those guys, and Hughes, as far as just top defenders in the league. But, for a time there, Seider was all that anybody talked about as far as the defenseman goes. So Sherratt obviously is kind of, having to play second fiddle on that D-line with him, but he's still getting work done. I'm very, very excited about Sherratt. He's got 18 hits in his last 10 games, and he's got 19 blocks in those last 10 games as well. Some of the things, 102 hits and 107 blocks. Now, those 102 hits are second only to Casper. The 107 blocks are second only to Edvinsson. No, actually, to Mo. Sorry. And the 46, that's what it was. Okay, so I got it all wrong there. Benny Sherratt, 102 hits, second to Casper. 107 blocks, second to Mo. But his 46 penalty minutes, that's where it is, though. That's where it is. You've seen Ben, you've seen his temper tantrum. So, yes, there's where those stats go up. And, yes, his 46 penalty minutes are second only to Ed's. So, there we got it, folks. I wrapped it back in together and put a bow on it. Obviously, the way he plays, he's on that second line D, playing alongside a rookie and Axel, and he's on the second penalty kill unit with Comfer, Cobb, and Doc, Bernard Docker, but I like to call him Doc. It doesn't always have to be about offense, folks. It doesn't have to be about how many goals, how many games have these guys gone without scoring, because a lot of times you're not bringing up a stat like that with a defenseman anyway. A lot of the times the defenseman, it's not like the Bobby Orr days where this guy was getting Hart trophies left and right. Defensemen now aren't necessarily expected to score so much unless you're Caleb Makar, okay, or Mo Seider, honestly. But the fact that Benny is still factoring in both hits and blocks, maybe get a little improvement on staying out of the penalty box so much, but sometimes you got to have that enforcing attitude to really put a team back on their heels and maybe get them in their own heads and gripping the stick a little tighter, playing these mind games that might come in handy a little down the road or a little down the line in the game itself. Whether or not Benny does that so much, I'm not sure, but I'll take those two stats that are best reserved for a defenseman, hits and blocks, and I'll say keep it up, Benny, because the Red Wings really need a strong defensive presence no matter where they can get it. They already have it with Mo. You help it a little bit as well, obviously, and Axel is showing the future is good for the defense too. So, folks, tomorrow's show we'll go a little bit of a throwback Thursday. We'll talk about tonight's game against Toronto. We'll see over a little bit of a recap. We'll do a little bit of a preview for tomorrow night's game against Minnesota. But until then, this has been Red Wings Daily. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight. This has been presented to you by FanArch. And as I like to say, LGRW from the PNW.